Welcome to the Camellia in Pastel Part 1. I've put my drawing on a half sheet of light gray pastel mat with a medium gray pastel pencil. I'm going to be using a combination of soft pastels and pencils to get the realistic effect of the flower and leaves. I'm starting with an Art Spectrum V517 Flinders Red Violet. Now I'm going to apply the color to the petal. We're going to go petal by petal around this flower, finishing each petal before we go on to the next one. I hadn't used Art Spectrum pastels before, but I really like them, and they have shades of color that are not available in any other set. I think they're made in Australia, and I highly recommend them. They're about the same softness as Rembrandt. Now you find all these colors and a line drawing with this video workshop. Now I'm going to use T514 Permanent Rose to add some brighter color into the shadow area of the petal. And then I'm going to blend this all together with my finger. The pastel mat really grabs the color and holds it. Now I'm going to modify this edge using a pastel pencil. This one is Carbothello 335 Magenta, and it allows me to get into the really small places that I can't get with the big sticks of pastel. And then I can blend it out with my finger or a small blender. I have a variety of blenders in size and shape and type. This is a little tiny stump blender that I can get into that edge and blend the darker pastel pencil into the color that we put down already. A white pastel pencil on this outer edge of the petal. This one is a Pitt pastel pencil, but you can use a Carbothello 100 pastel pencil. It doesn't matter, it's really up to you. We just want a pencil so we can make a fine white line, and I'm outlining this edge of the petal. Now I'm going to use this Conte pencil, number 26 Red Violet, to add the darker little shadow cast by the petal. I'm going to modify that a little bit with the white pastel pencil. Now this is a Carbothello white pastel pencil, number 100. And then again, this is a Conte 26. I really took my time with this project, but it was well worth it. The result is spectacular. I'm very pleased. So now I'm using my Carbothello 100 white pencil to add a little white to that edge of the petal and just blend it in with my finger. Now I'm using a Unison Blue Violet number 2 to add a little bit of color onto the petal to kind of modify it. I want it to be a little bluer, a little cooler in this area, and I can add the color right on top and blend it in with my finger. This is the Art Spectrum V512 Crimson. So I'm adding a light pink color, lightening up the petal in spots. Again, I'm just placing the color and blending it with my finger. Again, I'm using the V512 Crimson to add lighter color on the edge of the petal. I'm blending that in with my finger. Now this one's a little lighter. This is the X512 Crimson. It's lighter than the previous one we used. So I'm lighting up just a little bit more. And this is helping to shape that petal and make it roll to the back just a little bit by bringing that area forward. And now with my white Carbothello 100 pencil, this little area that I have drawn out is part of a shadow. The light actually strikes that area and goes across to the other petal. So I've drawn that in. I want to make this a little bluer. So for that, I'm using a Derwent pencil, and I believe that was the 360, and I've decided to go a little bit bluer than that. So I'm using the Unison Blue Violet number 2. I'm using the Flinders Red Violet number X517, which is very light, to put the center vein down the petal. I'm rubbing that in with my finger. I'm probably going to need to make it a little brighter as we move along, but it's going to start, we're going to start with it there. So now I'm going to make it a little brighter again, and I'm using my Carbothello pencil. I love the way that I can combine the soft pastels with the pencils as I move along. Now I'm making this a little bit darker with the Conte 26 Red Violet and adding it at the bottom of the petal where it goes underneath the other petals. So by using this combination of the soft pastels and the pencils, I can gradually bring up the values. Now I'm using the V517 Art Spectrum to darken that edge. And now we're going to use a pencil to darken right around the area where that light is going to be. And that is a Carbothello 335 magenta. So I'm just darkening that shadow. That little area that's left open there is where the bright light is going to hit the edge of that petal and fall across to the one underneath. This is the X512 Crimson. I'm lightening that edge, adjusting the values a little more. A little more white in the vein with the Carbothello 100 pencil. And darkening up that edge a little bit with the Conte 26 Red Violet. You can see I used a razor blade on that pencil to expose the lead. Now this is the little area that's going to be brighter where the light hits. So I'm going to use the X517 Flinders Red Violet, which is really just a super pale pink, to put the light on the edge. I don't want to use a bright white. I'm going to refine it a little bit with a white pastel pencil. And I'm going to use the same color to lighten the edge just a little more. And I'm still not happy with the center of the petal, so I'm going to make it a little lighter. I'll probably even go a little lighter than that. Now I'm going to move to this petal that's behind this petal that we just worked on. So using the 26 Red Violet Conte pencil, I'm outlining the petal. So I'm outlining that petal with the Conte pencil, and now I'm using the Unison Blue Violet number 2 to fill in that petal. I'm going to add some pink to that with the Art Spectrum V517. And then blend it together with my finger. And on on the very outer edge, I'm going to use the V512 Crimson Art Spectrum for that pale pink color. Now here I'm using the pastel pencil Conte number 26 to add the little tiny ruffles that are in that petal. Now here I'm using the Conte number 41 Cyclamen to add a deeper red into that area. The Conte pencils have a little more pigment in them than the Carbothellos. They're a little bit softer. Now this is a small piece of blue-green number 6 Unison, which adds a blue tint to the purple that's there. I wanted to cool it just a little bit. That's the thing I love most about working with pastel. I can use lots of different pastels and just get the most beautiful colors. Now I've decided to add a bright white accent in the center of this petal. And for that I'm using the Diane Townsend number 10, which is the brightest white pastel you can get. Everybody should get one of those. That's a Diane Townsend number 10 soft pastel. I'm using the Conte number 41, the Cyclamen, to draw around that petal. I'm also Going back to the 26 Conte pencil. Maybe I'll use the cyclamen after all and make that a little more towards the red. So I'm just adjusting the color back and forth between the 26 and the 41. They blend together. They work together well. So let's color in that bottom petal with the blue violet, number 2. And with the white, the Carbothello White 100, I'm sketching in where the light falls across that petal. Because there's bright light that hits the upper petal and then falls across the one underneath. So now I'm using the V12, that's V512 Crimson, to add a light color on the petal. I wanted to add a lighter color here, so I switched to the Flinders X517 red violet to add a near white light next to the pink that we previously put down. I'm adding some warm white, which is P501 Art Spectrum, over the top of that to brighten it up just a little bit more. I'm continuing on over the edge of that back petal to make that a little lighter with the warm as well, and using a blender to blend that in. That's a foam blender. Whatever works to get it smooth. You might have to try different kinds of blenders. And now I'm darkening that area with the Conte 26 pencil. Now I'm going to add a darker accent with the Conte number 5 violet. Takes it a little bit darker. And I'm outlining that edge with white again because it got lost, so I just want a hint of white to bring that edge of the petal forward. This is a Derwent P190 Coral for a pale pink accent on that edge, which works better than the white. And then the Conte number 7, again darkening that area, and you can see how that petal comes forward now. After darkening that little shadow further with the Conte number 7, I'm blending it with a small stump a little further. Now this is a Conte pencil number 11 pink. I like the way that that bright pink looks there. A lot of painting is experimentation, trying different things, and I like the way that looks. So I'll go back and darken that shadow just a little bit with the number 7. And back to the cyclamen, because I want to show the division between those two petals. Now I'm using the Art Spectrum V517 to add color on the edge of that. It's where the petal kind of crinkles up. So we want to define that area. So I'm going to draw that little bend in the petal with the cyclamen number 41 Conte pencil. Then using the Derwent coral pencil, I'm going to lighten that edge. Back to the V517. And then I use the Derwent pencil to kind of blend that together. I'm adding in this back area part of the petal with the V517, blending that with my finger. I'm going to perk that color up with this T514. I do like these Art Spectrum colors. They're really good for flowers. Those two blend together very well. And then a bit of that V512 crimson to put the light color on the edge. So I'm creating this area where the petal curls by adding the white edge first with the pale pink Art Spectrum, and then using the pencil, number 26 Conte pencil, underneath where the petal folds, and blending that out with the Derwent P130 Coral. We're using lots of different colors and pencils, but each one brings something different that we need to make the painting complete. And this is the Cyclamen number 41 Conte to put the darker pink value. And then lightening that up with the coral, the Derwent Coral. And this is the V112, the pale crimson. Now to get that bright, bright highlight, I'm using the Diane Townsend number 10 just in that small area. And you can see how that just creates that really, really bright sunlight effect. I'm continuing to adjust the values, this time using the number 26 Red Violet. I'm going to add a little bit darker color to that edge, a little bit darker there where the petal turns. Paying attention to all these little details is what's going to make your painting come to life. I'm using the warm white, which is P501, to lighten up the petal a little bit more. Now I'm moving to the next petal. I've put a piece of glassine under my hand, which is very important. It protects my work. I don't want to take a chance on anything happening to that. So I'm going to work this flower petal by petal. I'm going to start with the petals that are behind and work forward as I go, using the same methods that I used on this first petal. So I've outlined my petal with the pastel pencil number 26, and now I'm using blue violet number 2 to add the base coat. And now I'm using the V517 Art Spectrum to add add that beautiful pink color to that. So I'm working with the V17 517 Flinders Red Violet and the number 26 Red Violet Conte pencil. Now this is a new pastel, 286 Madder Pink. I'm adding some bright pink on the edge there. And then I've switched over to the 366 Shell Pink for a paler, cooler pink. Blending that in with my finger. I think that works well with the other colors. And this is 304 Orchid. And again, I've switched back to the Art Spectrum, using the same colors we've used before. Here I'm using Blue Violet number 3 to darken that edge and blend it into the paler color that we added previously. I'm going to use the number 3 to draw a shadow line and rub that in with my finger, and then use the violet pastel pencil to get a sharper, darker area. The pastel by itself wasn't enough, so I'm using the pencil to get that darker. So you can see I work back and forth with the colors to get exactly what I'm looking for. I really like using a combinations of pastel pencils and soft pastels to create paintings. They're much more detailed, and I like being able to use both. And I like the pastel mat. It holds a lot of pastel, and the colors are very vibrant. This is blue-green number 6, to just add a little light blue to show some of the lighter areas in the petal and to make the petal look like it is bending. So this is the light areas, and the purple makes the darker area. Now I'm using the V512 Crimson to add pale pink in that area. You have a reference photo included with this project, so you can use a reference photo to see why and where I'm adding different things. And by using your reference photo while you paint, I always use a reference photo. It helps you to learn to make the judgments and place the colors when you're doing your own work. Now I'm going to move on to the next petal. So I'm going to outline the petal that's on top of it. So we're going to paint this one that's on top of the previous one we painted, but behind the next one. So I'm going to use my base coat, which is V517 Flinders Red Violet in Art Spectrum. And now I'm using V512 Crimson. And I'll blend those together with my finger. And I'm using that T514 Permanent Rose, that bright red down in there. It looks very pretty. And that's the Blue Violet number 3. Just a tad of that. decided to use the new pastel, which is, this is 366 Shell Pink, which very closely matches this X512 Crimson. It's also a very pale pink. And just a little bit of blue violet too on that edge. So by this point we've pretty well got the colors for our flower established. We'll be adding a couple more, but it's pretty much what we're going to use. This is 304 Orchid. The smaller and harder pastels help us get better edges than the big sticks. Now I'm going to use a Rembrandt 101.5, which is a soft Rembrandt, to add some white. It's not as soft as a Diane Townsend or as bright, but it is a brighter white than the warm white we were using, and we needed another white for our petals. Now you can see I'm using my pencil to draw a line here, which is where a shadow occurs. So the pencil helps to, the white pencil shows where that edge meets the darker edge. And I can go back with my 26 Conte and darken some of these areas up. Here I'm outlining our next petal, which with a Carbothello 335 Magenta. Now you might wonder why I chose this pencil. Remember, the Carbothellos are not as highly pigmented as the Contes. So I want to start with the less pigmented colors really in the pencils and then move on to the softer ones. So I'm using my number 26 Conte pencil to outline and define this area, putting in some shadows. I'm going to use this 366 Shell Pink to put a little edge in there so you can see where one petal meets the other. So now I'm base coating this petal with the V517 and adding a paler pink with the X512 crimson. This is the pale pink. Always follow your values. Your values are the most important part of your painting. And we're going to add some brilliant color with that T514. Put some light pink over that and kind of modify it. And I'm using that little foam blender to kind of blend those together. It's the first time I've really used that. And it works okay. I think there probably might be something better out there, and I'll let you know if I find it. Now for this little petal that's sitting down here in front, I'm using Blue Violet 3. And blend that with my finger. A little bit. And now I'm going back to the V517 Flinders Red Violet. I guess you can tell I really like that color. And then for some added color pop, I'm going to do the T514 and blend those together with my finger. Use my little tiny blender, which I think I like better than the other one, to kind of blend those two together. Moving on to the next petal. This is a rather complicated area in the center. I'm using the 335 magenta to outline that little area, and I'm coloring that in with the 514 Permanent Rose Art Spectrum. And then next to that, I'm adding the V517 Flinders Violet and blending it both together with the Derwent Coral Pencil. This is where the pencils just come in so handy in these teeny little areas. So I'm using the Conte 26 there. Now I'm going to add a little blue violet with the blue violet number 2 on the edge of that shadow. And then to straighten up that edge, I'm going to use the new pastel 366 Shell Pink. I'm going to add a little bit of the V512 Crimson Pink, which modifies that. Just a little. And here I'm using the Rembrandt white to sharpen that highlight on that back petal. Again, I can't stress enough, I'm following the values that I see in my reference photo. Let's sharpen up that edge with the 26 Conte pencil. I'd say that the 26 pencil was the most used pencil in this project, particularly in the flower. The white, and now I'm going to use the X517 pale pink Flinders Red Violet. It has just a hint of pink in it. here I'm outlining the next petal. In part 2, we're going to continue painting these petals in this camellia, so be sure and join me there. Also, check the website for other video workshops you might enjoy.